And we're back.
You look like a dispatcher.
Uh, Dispatcher. I look like one.
You do.
If anybody's curious, like, huh, the sound sounds very nice and clean because I'm using external microphones for this thing.
And mine died.
Oh no.
R.I.P. headphones.
No, no, no.
Don't leave your shit in the washer, kids.
Oh no.
They lasted a good 2.5 years. Miss them every day. I see them on my desk, and I'm like, I miss you guys.
R.I.P.
I do. I do. I fucking miss them, man. I see them, and I'm like, I love you guys.
Oh my god.
You guys were my homies. You guys helped me through work. You've helped me through everything. You've been my support headphones for the last 2.5 years.
Not even your dogs?
They don't come with me to work.
Okay.
If they did, then yes.
Okay.
So,
All right, moment of silence for Bree's headphones.
isn't that a third world fucking problem right there?
All right.
You're gonna get that one person that's like, this bitch can afford headphones. They're a gift.
Oh my god.
They're a gift.
That's true. No,
Before the
California.
economy went to shit.
Yeah, like our country's just shit right now. Even though it's still the greatest or whatever you fucking want to call it, it's shit. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast. Have Pop Tarts here. Have Pop Tarts.
Oh my god.
I'm
Dude, I really want like some beef and broccoli right now.
beef and broccoli. Like what?
Yeah.
Like what soup or? Oh wait, beef and broccoli. I'm an idiot.
I was just like, wait, they make a soup of that? Since when?
I was thinking of beef and chicken, like ramen soup. I was like,
I haven't eaten a ramen soup and it's been a cool minute, to be honest. They don't taste the same. They kind of make me nauseous now.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah, they don't hit the same anymore.
really?
Well, then again,
I
it hits the same nowadays.
bitch. Not that. I'm gonna kick your little ass. That's gonna be the new title.
Right?
I'm gonna kick your little ass. Yeah, no, she was scratching the my little backpack carrier for the laptop. That's why.
Oh, man. Oh, the minions. Yeah. I was about to ask you. I'm like, so what did you think of your story last week? I'm like, oh wait.
Oh yeah, I didn't do one.
I was like, oh shit, never mind.
I do have a little poem, so we could do that. It your story was trippy, and it will never end.
Oh yeah, dude. I no lie, I forgot I did that one, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, I did Jeff the Killer last week, right? I'm like, oh wait a minute. No, that was the previous story. At this point,
Yeah.
life feels like a no-end house.
Mhm.
Which level are we stuck on? Who knows?
Mhm.
Do we really know? Oh, dude, want to hear something fucking funny?
Hmm.
So, I sent my boyfriend a picture of my lunch today. I basically made like a chicken bowl. I got some leftovers from yesterday, some KFC chicken,
Okay.
and I had made some teriyaki the other night, and I made that into a chicken bowl,
Mhm.
and he had me dying because I guess he had wiener schnitzel and he bought his homie a hat that says "I love wieners," and I told him I need that hat in my life. I need that. I will wear it everywhere. I don't care. I'll come to work with it.
Oh my god.
I fucking want that hat now. He has created a mustard, a monster. You should not have shown me that hat. I didn't even know they sold hats.
With that?
Yes, I'll wear it to my wedding. I'll wear it to somebody's wedding. I was supposed to say ready. I was like, no, that's not the word. So instead of talking about wieners, we're gonna go on to your poem.
Okay. All right.
I'll show you the hat later.
Okay. It's called The Sixth Room by I don't me or something like that. In the blood warm water of dreams, there is a place of forest. In the center, a calm, frozen stream gleams in the moonlight. Tall trees stand infinitely on all sides. You cannot leave. You have no desire to. It is dark, blurred streaks of blue and green run streamlessly through the forest. You know that there is a reason for this imprisonment each night. The forest wants something from you. A thick, silent, gentle wind softly brushes your face. Leaves bristles in anticipation. Morning doves cry, and then they too hold their breath. How long has the forest been waiting? A stab of fear in the heart, asking, am I going to die? Must the branches of this place, the vines and tendrils, take our body, willingly give your flesh to nourish the forest, and you may leave. Intimidating silence. The birds gather in the trees to watch, a kind of hunger glistening in their beady eyes. A fear you've never known before takes hold of your throat. A feeling like this was never meant to be found. This forest is quiet. This forest is calm. This forest wants you to stay forever. This forest wants your secrets. There is nowhere left to hide. And that's The Sixth Room, a poem.
Okay. What are you getting from the poem?
I don't know. It could just be a metaphor of something. It doesn't technically have to be like a forest or something. More like maybe our self, like dark side or something.
I mean, I feel like it might be not allegory, but maybe um kind of like almost saying like the forest is death, and
Right.
you leave your body there basically because
Mm-hmm.
you're with the I want your flesh and all that, and then you're scared out of your mind because you're like, what is this feeling? Am I going to like die? Kind of like maybe the last, I wouldn't say last moments of somebody like dying, maybe, or they had an accident,
Right.
and this is their way of kind of coping with like the death, but they're like, well, I don't want to stay, you know,
True. I think a lot of people don't want to stay anymore.
and that's why the forest. It was saying like the forest wants you,
Right, right, right.
It's like it wants your body, but you being free is technically quote unquote your soul. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
But the person's like afraid, like, oh, that's what at least I got from it when you were reading it. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, death is always that fun topic, and it's always like the Grim Reaper almost, but the forest is the Grim Reaper.
Right.
All right, and we are good to go.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, bitch, I pushed play 10 minutes ago.
What?
Fuck you! Why you turned around?
I know. I'm like, I heard her, and then you were like saying something, and then I looked. She did it again. I was like, "What? You hear her?"
Not really. I don't really ever hear anything on your end until like the episode comes out, and I'm like, there's the noise.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah. Cause the well, hopefully you won't hear her that much.
Hopefully not, but if not, it is what it is.
Right.
I have a pretty interesting story. I like how all my stories are like fucking a decade ago. Yours are like newer ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just realized that. This is from Reddit slash No Sleep from 9 years ago. It's called Borrasca, and it was written by the Dialect Emperor. I don't know. That's just the username that fucking comes up with the story. So, all right, and let's go.
It's a long story, but one you've never heard before. This story is about a place that dwells on the mountain, a place where bad things happen. You may think you know about the bad thing. You may decide you have it all figured out, but you don't. Because the truth is worse than monsters or men. At first, I was upset when they told me we were moving to some little town out in the Ozarks. I remember staring at my dinner plate while I listened to my sister throw a temper tantrum unbefitting of a 14-year-old honor student. She cried, she pleaded, and then she cursed at my parents. She threw a bowl at my dad and told him it was all his fault. Mom told Whitney to calm down, but she stormed off, slamming every door in the house on the way to her room. I secretly blamed my dad as well. I heard the whispers too. My dad had done something wrong, something bad, and the sheriff's department had reassigned him to some little out of the way county to save face. My parents didn't want me to know that, but I was 9, so it didn't take me too long to warm up to the idea of a change. It was like an adventure. New house, new school, new friends. Whitney, of course, felt the opposite. Moving to a new school at her age is hard. Moving away from her new boyfriend, however, was even harder. While the rest of us packed up our things and said our goodbyes, Whitney sulked and cried and threatened to run away from home. But a month later, we pulled up to our new house in Driskin, Missouri. She was sitting right next to me, texting vigorously on her phone. Thankfully, we moved over the summer and I had months of free time to explore the town. When Dad started his new job at the sheriff's office, Mom drove us all around the city, commenting on this and that. The city was much, much smaller than St. Louis, but also a lot nicer. There was no bad areas, and the entire town looked like something you'd see on a postcard. Driskin was built in a mountain valley surrounded by healthy forest land with walking trails and crystal clear lakes. I was 9. It was summer, and this was heaven. We'd only been living in Driskin a week or so when our next door neighbors came to introduce themselves, Mr. and Mrs. Landy, and their 10-year-old son Kyle. While our parents talked and drank mimosas, I watched the lanky redhead son hung out in the doorway, shyly eyeing the PS2 in the living room. Uh, do you play? I asked. He shrugged. Not really. Do you wanna? I just got Tekken 4. Kyle glanced at his mom, who had just been handed her third mimosa. Yeah, sure. In the afternoon, with the ease and simplicity of our age, Kyle and I became best friends. We spent the cool summer mornings outside exploring the Ozarks and the hot afternoons in my living room playing the PS2. He introduced me to the other kid in the neighborhood our age, a skinny, quiet girl named Kimber Destro. She was shy but friendly and always up for anything. Sounds like you, Nicole. Kimber kept up with us so well that she quickly became the third wheel on our tricycle. With my dad at work all the time, my mom consumed with her new friendships, and my sister locked in her room all day, the summer was ours and to take. And take it we did. Kimber and Kyle showed me where all the best hiking trails were, which lakes were the best and more accessible by bike, and where the best stores were in town. By the time the first day of school rolled over in September, I knew I was home. Our last Saturday before school started, Kyle and Kimber told me they were going to take me somewhere special, somewhere we hadn't been yet. The Triple Tree. What's a Triple Tree? I asked. It's a totally awesome, totally huge treehouse out in the woods, Kyle said excitedly. Whatever, Kyle. Come on, you guys. If there was a frickin' treehouse, you would have shown it to me already. Nuh-uh, we wouldn't. Kyle shook his head. There's a ceremony for first timers and everything. Kimber nodded eagerly in agreement, her dark orange curls bouncing off her tiny shoulders. Yep, it's true, Sam. If you ever enter the treehouse without the proper ceremony, you'll disappear and then you'll die. My face fell. Now I knew they were making fun of me. That's a lie. You guys are lying to me. No, we're not, Kimber insisted. Yeah, we'll show you. We just have to get a knife for the ceremony and we'll go. What? Why do we need a knife? Is it a blood ceremony? I whispered. No way, Kimber promised. You just have to say some words and carve your name into the triple tree. Yep, it takes like a minute, Kyle agreed. And it's a really cool tree house, I asked. Oh yeah, Kyle promised. Okay, I guess I'll go then. Kyle on using the same knife he used during his ceremony, but we paid a price to get it. Mr. Landy just happened to be home with her youngest son Parker, and despite Kyle's many objections to his mother, he insisted he take his 6-year-old brother with him. Go to the treehouse. It's only for older kids. Parker can't go. I don't care if you're going to the Exorcist movie marathon. You're taking your brother with you. I need a break, Kyle. Can't you understand that? I'm sure your friends won't mind. She flashed Kimber and me a challenging look. Right? No, not at all, Kimber said, and I nodded in agreement. Kyle made a loud, dramatic sign and called his brother. Parker, put your shoes on. We're leaving now. I'd met youngest Lander several times before and felt that he was unlike his older brother in looks as in disposition. While Kyle was a wild, excitable fireball with hair to match, I found Parker to be anxious, fidgety boy with small eyes and dark brown hair. We got on our bikes and made our way to a lesser-known hiking trail a few miles. I'd asked the lead when we'd ridden across it several weeks before, and Kyle had given me an underwhelming answer of nowhere interesting. We pulled up to the trail and leaned our bikes against the wooden signpost, which read West Rim Prescott or Trail. Why are there so many trails around here named Prescott? I asked. Is there a Prescott Mountain or something? Kimber laughed. No, dummy. It's because of the Prescott. You know, the family that lives in the mansion up on Fairmount? Mr. Prescott and his son Jimmy own like half the businesses in town. More than half, Kyle agreed. Which ones? Does he own the GameStop? The only store in Driskin I actually cared about. I don't know about that one. Kyle wound a lock around the 4 bikes and clicked the bar into place and spun the numbers on the dial. But like the hardware store, the pharmacy, Gilton's on Second, and the newspaper. Did they start this town? I asked. Nah, mining started the town. I think they. I will go home. Parker had been so quiet, I'd completely forgotten he was there. You can't go home, Kyle rolled his eyes. Mom said I had to bring you. Now come on, it's only like a 2-mile walk. I want to take my bike, Parker answered. Too bad, we're going off trail. I don't want to go. I'll stay with the bikes. Don't be such a wussy. I'm not. Kyle, be nice, Kimber hissed. He's only 5. I'm 6, Parker objected. I'm sorry, 6. You're 6. Kimber smiled at him. All right, fine. He can hold your hand if he wants, but he's coming. Kyle turned and started up the trail. Parker's face fell into an undignified frown, but when the charming Kimber stuck her hand down and wiggled her fingers at him, he took it. Kyle was right. It wasn't a long walk, only half a mile down the trail and then another half-mile hike on the well-tread path up the mountain. It was a steep climb though, and by the time we got to a treehouse, I was winded. What do you think? Kyle asked. It. I studied the tree as I caught my breath. It's pretty awesome, I smiled. And it was. They hadn't lied. And the treehouse was the biggest I'd ever seen. It had multiple rooms and there was actual curtains in the window. A sign above the door said Apricot Fort, and a rope ladder hung below the threshold, missing several planks. I'm going first, yelled Parker, but Kimber caught his arm. You have to do the ceremony first or you'll disappear, she reminded him. That'd be fine with me, Kyle grumbled. I was eager to get into the fort it myself. I'll get the knife. I held up my hand. Kyle smiled and dug the switchblade out of his pocket. There's some space in the back to carve your name. I opened up the knife, walked around the tree looking for an empty slot. There were so many names on the tree, I had to crunch down and look near the bottom since I couldn't reach any higher. I spotted both Kyle and Kimber's carvings on the tree, and I finally found a spot I liked near the ladder. I bit my tongue and carved Sam W. into the blank piece of bark underneath someone's name, Paul S. Parker went next, but I had so much trouble with the knife that Kyle had to do it for him. All right, let's go. I ran over to the rope ladder. Wait, Kyle yelled. You have to say the words first. Oh, yeah. Okay, what are they? Kimber sang them out. Underneath the triple tree, there is a man who waits for me. Should I go or should I stay? My fate's the same either way. That's that's creepy, I said. What does it mean? Kimber shrugged. No one knows anymore, it's just tradition. Oh, okay. Can you say it one more time, slower? Once Parker and I had recited the poem, we were ready to go. I climbed the rope ladder first and took stock of my new surroundings. The treehouse was more or less empty. Empty, just a dirty rug here and there, and some trash, old soda cans, beer cans, and fast food wrappers. I went room to room, 4 in total, and found nothing of real interest until the last one. An old mattress laid in the corner, and piles of musty, ripped clothing scattered the floor. Did a hobo live here? I asked. Nah, this room's been like this for as long as I can remember, Kyle said from the doorway behind me. It smells gross, I said. Kimber walked up to the threshold but refused to go any further. It, it's not the smell that freaks me out, it's that, she said, pointed up to the ceiling, and I raised my eyes to read what was written there. Road to the gates of hell, mile marker 1. What does it mean? I asked. It's just older kids being dicks, Kyle said. Come on, I'll show you the best part of the treehouse. We walked back into the first room and Parker looked up at us and smiled, pointing down into what he clumsily carved into the wooden floor. Fart, Kyle read. That's hilarious, Parker. He rolled his eyes, but his little brother didn't pick up on the sarcasm and smiled proudly. Kimber sat down on the floor next to Parker, and I sat on his other side. Kyle took the knife from his brother and then walked across the room and wedged the blade between 2 planks of the wooded wall. He pushed, and the board gave, opening up a small secret compartment in the wall. Kyle took something out and pushed the plank back until it was flush with the others. Check it out! He turned around and proudly held 2 cans of Miller Lite beer. Whoa, I said. Ew, warm beer, that's gross. How did you even know it was there? Kimber asked. Bill Saunders told me. Are we gonna drink it? I asked. Hell yeah, we're gonna drink it. Kyle came and sat down in our circle, popped open the first beer, and offered it to Kimber. She eyed it like he was trying to hand her a dirty diaper. Come on, Kimber. Come on, Kimmy. Don't call me that. She yelled at him and then reluctantly took the open beer. She smelled it and made a face, and then pinched her nose and took a small swig. Kimber shrugged. That was even grosser than I imagined. I don't want any. I'll tell Mom, Parker said quietly as the beer passed in front of him to me. Good, 'cause you ain't getting any, Kyle promised. And you won't tell Mom shit. I put on my best poker face and took a long, deep swallow of the warm beer before I had the chance to smell it. It was a poor decision. When I wenched, the foul, yellow liquid went all over my shirt. Oh man, now I'm gonna smell like beer. We spent the next hour and a half drinking 2 cans of Miller Lite, and after a while, the taste grew more tolerable. I couldn't tell if I was becoming a man or actually getting drunk. I hope it was the former. When the last drop of the last beer was consumed, we spent 20 minutes trying to determine if we were drunk. Kyle assured us that he was wasted while Kimber wasn't sure. I didn't think I was, but I failed all the drunk tests. Kimber was in the middle of reciting the alphabet backwards when a loud metallic grinding suddenly pierced the calm mountain like a gunshot. Kimber stopped talking and we spent a few minutes staring at each other, waiting for the noise to end. Parker curled into Kimber and put his hand over his ears. After what seemed like 10 whole minutes, the sound ended as suddenly as it began. What was that? I asked. Parker mumbled something into Kimber's sweater. Do you guys know? I had tried again. Kimber stared at her feet as she crossed and uncrossed them. Well, it's nothing, Kyle asked finally. We hear it sometimes in town. It's not a big deal. It's just louder up here. But what's making that sound? Borrasca, Kimber whispered without taking her eyes off her feet. Who's that? I asked. Not who, where, Kyle answered. It's a place. Another town? No, it's just a place in the woods. Oh, bad things happen there, Kimber said more to herself than me. Like what? Bad things, Kimber repeated. Yeah, don't ever try to find it, dude, Kyle said behind me, or bad things will happen to you, too. But, like, what bad things? I turned around, Kyle shrugged, and Kimber stood up and walked over to the rope ladder. We better go. I have to get home to my mom, she said. We climbed down the ladder and one by one, and then started to walk back to the trailhead in an unfamiliar silence. I was dying of curiosity about Borrasca, but I couldn't tell if and what to ask about it. So, who lives there? Where? Kyle asked. Borrasca. The Skidmen, Parker answered. Kyle laughed. Only babies believe that. Like men who are skinned? Or like their skin is gone? I asked excitedly. Yeah, that's what some kids say. Most of us kids stop believing in that. Though when though when we turn double digits, Kyle said. I looked back at Kimber, who was still 9 like me, but she was staring down the trail, ignoring us. That seemed to be the end of the conversation, and by the time we reached our bikes, the awkwardness was gone, and we were all giggling, trying to decide if we were too drunk to bike home. School started 2 days later, and I'd completely forgotten about Borrasca. When my dad pulled up to the curb to drop me off that morning, he locked the doors before I could get out. Not so fast, he laughed. As your father, I get the privilege of giving you a hug and telling you to have a good first day of school. But Dad, I gotta go meet Kyle by the flag before the first bell. And you will, but first, give me a hug first. In a few years, you'll be driving yourself to school and let me be your dad while I still can. Fine, I said, excerpt, and leaned over to give my dad a quick hug. Thank you. Now go meet your friend. Your mom will be here to pick you up at 3:40. I know, Dad. Why can't I take the bus like Whitney? When you're 12, you can take the bus. He smiled and unlocked the doors. Until then, I get to drop you off in the mornings. If you think I'd make you look cooler, you can ride in the back seat behind the cage. Dad, just don't. I threw open the door of his cruiser before he could say anything more and ran as he left behind me. Kyle was already waiting for me at the flagpole, And he'd found Kimber, too. Dude, you almost missed the bell, he yelled when he saw me. I know, sorry. Whose class are you in? Kimber asked. She was wearing a red sweater and leggings with frogs on them. Her curly orange hair was brushed into ringlets, and her lips were pink and shiny. She'd never looked prettier, and I was surprised to realize I'd never really seen Kimber as a girl. Mr. Diamonds. Me too, she said cheerfully. Lucky, Kyle scoffed. I'm in Mrs. Trevity's. Only two fourth grade teachers, and I get the crappy one. Kimber grimaced. Yeah, my mom had her when she was a kid. What's wrong with her? What did she say? Just that she's strict, gives out homework on the weekends. On the weekends? Fuck. Excuse me, Mr. Landy? I immediately recognized the tall man that had suddenly appeared behind the white-faced Kyle. S- Sorry, sir. I meant dang. Kimber giggled. I'm sure you did. He nodded. Hi, Sheriff Clearly. Even though I'd only met him a few times, I like my dad's boss, and he liked me. Well, hello, Sammy. Are you excited for your first day? Sheriff Clearly crossed his arms in front of him and widened his stance imposingly, but gave me a wide smile. Yes, sir, I said, and then added lamely, what are you doing here? I'm giving a presentation to the 5th and 6th graders about safety when walking to and from school. Yeah, he gives it every year, Kyle muttered. Cool, I smiled. Sheriff clearly nodded at me and then turned and walked away. I looked around confused. Where's Kipper? She took off. She was annoyingly on time to everything. And as to illustrate his point, the bell rang. We both ran up to the stairs and inside. We walked into class and saw Kimber had saved me a spot next to her at the back. Mr. Diamond, a short, round man of 40 or so, nodded at me when I came in. Mr. Walker, I presume? Yeah, that's me, I mumbled as I rushed past him to the desk next to Kimber. Welcome to Driskin Elementary, and for the rest of you, welcome back. Go Grizzlies. The class echoed a reluctant, subdued, Go Grizzlies. Kimber introduced me to the other kids in class throughout the morning. Most of them were nice, if sort of underwhelmed by her. They said their hellos and asked me where I was from, and the conversation usually ended with an unimpressed, okay. A group of girls who sat near the front snuck looks at us all morning and snickered. I asked Kimber who they were, and she just shrugged. During our second break, they came up and talked to me. Are you friends with Kimber Destro? A tall, dark-haired girl asked me. Yeah, I asked and looked over at Kimber. She was watching me with worried eyes. Are you related to her? No. I didn't think so because you don't have orange hair. I didn't know what to say to that. You don't have to be friends with her, you know, said the second girl with the oddly round face. I want to be friends with her. The third girl behind the other two snorted. She had a pretty auburn hair and a rude upturned nose. Well, if you do, you're going to be in the ugly kid group, the first girl warned. And once you're in that group, you can't leave it ever. Better than the bitch group, I said. Rude nose and round faced girl gasped, but the dark haired girl smiled. We'll see, she said, and the three returned to the corner of the room. I sat back down next to Kimber, feeling like a badass. It was the first time I'd ever used a swear word in front of anyone other than Kyle. What did they say to you? Kimber asked nervously. They said you're too pretty to be near them and that you make them look gross, so we have to stay away from them. Liar, Kimber answered, but I could tell she was smiling. We met Kyle in the cafeteria at lunch, and he had nothing but bad things to say about his morning. Miss Treverty was old and mean, and she made everyone come up and say something about themselves, even though the class only had 14 kids, and they all knew each other. But the bell rang for recess. I went to throw my lunch away with Kyle, and I bumped into the kid I hadn't seen before. Hey, are you Sam Walker? The kid asked. Yeah? Oh, your sister's dating my brother. Oh man, Kyle laughed. Your sister's dating a Whitaker? Shut up, Kyle, the kid grumbled. She's gonna be Whitney Whitaker. As funny as it was, I couldn't help be a little surprised. Not that I'd been paying attention, but I'd only seen Whitney out of her room once over the summer. Where did she meet him? I asked the Whitaker kid. I don't know, probably at his job. His job? Where? He works at Drisking Water. It didn't make any sense to me, but I shrugged it off. I do remember my mom giving Whitney some menial tasks like getting the car washed and setting up some utilities to get her out of the house. Maybe she met him once and they started dating over text. Teenagers were weird. The rest of the school week followed much like the first. We were well into the first month, and when I heard someone mention the skin men again, we were out in the playground and Kyle and I were trying to start a fire with two large wood chips. I'd just given myself a splinter when the distant sound of metal grinding on the floor flooded over the playground, silenced every one of us. Borrasca, I said in awe. Yup, said Phil Saunders. The skin men kill again? Hey, Kyle said only babies believe in the skin men. I threw an accusatory look at Kyle. They do. Bill's just stupid. Nah. Ask Danielle. She's seen them. Phil scanned the playground and then yelled at the blonde girl talking to rude nose girl. Hey, Danielle, come here. The blonde girl rolled her eyes but came skipping over anyways. What do you want? I told you Kayla doesn't like you, Philip. No, tell them about the skin men. Phil gestured to the air around us, which was filled with metallic scraping coming down from the mountain. You tell them. No, you saw them, so you tell them. I didn't see them. Paige saw them. Oh, Phil said, and an uncomfortable silence descended. You guys are weird, Danielle said before flipping her hair and our faces and leaving. Who's Paige? I asked when she'd gone. Her sister, Phil said. Paige disappeared when we were like 5, Kyle said. After she saw the skin men, Phil added. The sounds from the mountain abruptly ended, and the subdued atmosphere of the playground disappeared with it. When the bell rang, Kyle lined up in his class line, and since Phil was in his class, I made sure I was behind him. The teachers began to count us off. Hey, what else do you know about Borrasca? I whispered to him. My brother said that's where people go when they disappear. To Borrasca. What happens to them there? Bad things, he said, and then shushed me when I asked him what did he mean. The year dragged on. It wasn't until Christmas break that I heard the machine at Borrasca again. It was December, and I was there with a thick blanket of snow on the ground, which only served to amplify the noise from the mountain. I sat in my room, listening to it for a few minutes, trying to decide what was happening in a place that bad things happen. I saw my dad's cruiser pull up out the window and went downstairs to greet him. As I passed my sister's door, I heard her giggling in that annoying teenager way, and I cringed. I hoped Kimber never got like that. Dad! I skidded over the landing just as he opened the door. My dad stomped the snow off his boots and threw open his arms. Sammy, how many years has it been? He joked. It was true I hadn't seen much of my dad lately since he was working so much. Doing what? I didn't know since this was the quietest, lamest town ever. Mom thought the sheriff was grooming Dad for his job, since clearly was so old and Dad never really agreed or disagreed with her. Only been at the department 7 months after all, and he doubted people in the county would vote for him. Hey, did you hear that? That was like a machine sounding noise? Yup, I hear it in town every now and then. Do you know what it is? I asked the sheriff about it, and he told me the noise comes from a private property up in the Ozarks. Is the property called Borrasca? I asked quickly. I have no idea. Borrasca? Where'd you hear that? I shrugged. Kids at school. Well, it's nothing to worry about, Sammy. Probably just some logging equipment. But is the place called Borrasca? Like, have you heard that name before? No, I have not heard that before. Dad pulled his boots off and shrugged off his coat, looking toward the kitchen. I could tell I was losing him. Have you ever heard of the Skin Men? I asked quickly. Skin Men? Good God, Sam. Is this your sister telling you these stories? No. But he wasn't listening to me anymore. Whitney! He yelled up the stairs. No, Dad. Whitney doesn't even talk to me, I repeated. I heard a door creak open upstairs and Whitney peered over the railing, phone in hand and an annoyed look on her face. Are you trying to scare your brother? Dad demanded. Dad, no, I said again. Whitney shot me a betrayed look. Ugh, seriously? As if I'd waste my time. You aren't telling him stories about skinned men? No, Dad, I told you I heard it at school, I said. Whitney gestured to me as if to say, see? Alright, well, you kids need to start getting along. Your family, for Christ's sakes. Whitney rolled her eyes, and when Dad walked into the kitchen, she stuck her tongue out at me. Real mature Whitney. I yelled up at her, but she was already gone. I'll tell Dad about your boyfriend. Christmas came and went with a surprisingly smoothness at our house. Whitney and I got everything we'd had on our list, which was a first for us. The town may be smaller, but Dad's paycheck were clearly better. I wore my new Rams Parker on the first day back to school after Christmas break. Kyle fawned over and Kimber showed off the blue pearl necklace her mom had given her for Christmas. Kyle and I feigned interest but did it poorly. Kimber just knew, but just seemed happy we cared enough to fake it. We said goodbye to Kyle for the morning. Kimber was suddenly slammed from the side. Kyle caught her before she fell, and I spun around angrily to see the dark-haired girl, whose name I learned was Phoebe Dranger, laughing and walked away from us with the round-faced girl. You're bad people who make bad life choices, Kyle yelled at them. When I'm your boss someday, I'll make you clean bathrooms. Yeah, and if Kyle's your boss, you know you messed up, I added. Kyle and I high-fived and turned to Kimber, but she wasn't sharing in our victory. She was trying to hide the tears on her face. Don't sweat those girls, Kimber. Nobody likes them. People are just nice to them because they're related to the Prescott. Kyle tried to give her an awkward pat on the back, but Kimber turned away from him and ran in the opposite direction. I hate those girls. Like, I really hate them, I said. I know, they're bitches, Kyle answered, mouthing the last word as he looked over his shoulder for looking adults. Well, I better get to class and make sure they don't try to talk to her again. There's an assembly this morning, no class until after lunch. Seriously, that's awesome. Do we have to sit by class? Not usually, but we better get there quick so we can get our seats at the back, Kyle said as we started walking. What's the assembly for? I asked. It's either DARE or the History Society presentation. What's DARE? You know, DARE as don't you dare do drugs or you're grounded until you're dead. Oh, I hope it's a history thing then. We found Kimber already in the auditorium. She had collected herself and saved us both seats at the back of the room. She waved us over just as a puffy, stern Mr. Trividi walked onto the stage. Hello, 4th grade students. This morning we have a special presentation for you from the History Presentation Society of Triskin. If you have questions during the course of the lecture, please raise your hand. Like that'll happen, Kyle laughed. Now I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Wyatt Downing, Mr. Catherine, Miss Catherine Scullin, and of course, Mr. James Prescott. What? Jamie Prescott and not his dad? That's so weird, Kimber whispered. Dude, Thomas Prescott has done this presentation every year for like 20 years, Kyle said. It's definitely weird. It's not weird, whispered Mike Sutton from behind us. He leaned forward. Tom Prescott went like crazy a year ago. He didn't do the presentation last year when my sister was here either. I don't like Jimmy Prescott. Kimber shook her head. He gives me the heebie jeebies. His dad is so much nicer. He's like a grandpa. The presentation was slow and boring. Mr. Dowding and Mr. Scullin. Miss Scullin talked about the first settlers here, Cherokee, the Trail of Tears. They talked about Alexander Triskin's discovery of the mother lode of ore in the mountains and settling through with his family to mine and refine the ore. Then James Prescott took the stage from there to tell the story of his family's early journey to the town and the revitalization of Dreskin itself in the late 50s. The last part was more interesting of it all, and I found Jimmy Prescott to be infallibly actually learned quite a bit. So much so that I was interested enough to ask a question, which Kyle warned us was committing social suicide. Mr. Prescott scanned the room and answered the few other questions before they finally got to me at the back. Yes, you in the back. Mr. Prescott, why did the mines close? Like, what happened? I asked. Very good question, young sir. What did you say your name was? Ah, Sam Walker. Ah, I believe I met your father the other day at the sheriff's office. Welcome to Driskin. As for your question, most of the mines were closed in 1951 after a long period of unprofitability. The mountain had simply ran out of the iron ore. The mills and refineries were abandoned and the town suffered for years. The miners and their families moved away, stores went out of business, schools closed, and the Driskin became a ghost town. That would have been the end of it if it weren't for the stubborn families like mine, who refused to leave. We refused to give up the town, and after many, many years of hard work, Driskin became the Piscaret little haven in the Ozarks that it is today. I hope that answers your question. I sat back down and Kyle shook his head at me. Bro. The assembly suffered through another 15 minutes of awkward Q&A until Mrs. Trivedi finally cut us loose. We were released into the cafeteria to wait for the lunch lines to open. Kyle, Kimber, and I sat in our usual corner. That was so boring. Kyle whined. When are we going to figure out that nobody cares about Driskin history? Seriously, I fell asleep like 3 times. Kimber nudged me. Sam seemed to care, she teased. I just want to know about the mines. Mines are creepy, that's all. Yeah, but all of our mines are blown up. We can't go in them anymore, Kyle said. Blown up? I asked. Kimber nodded. Some of the kids died after going into the mines, so the city set off some controlled blasts and imploded the caverns. At least that's what my mom said. They messed up, though, and I heard they blew up the water table or poisoned it or something. What? How do you know that? Kyle asked. Kimber shrugged. I heard my dad talking about it. Did they use C4 or something? I guess. So like we all we all drink the water, so we all have C4 in our bodies and we could explode any minute? Kyle said excitedly. Do you think that's what happened to all the missing people? I asked, sitting there one day and boom. Yeah, dude. Kyle grabbed my shoulders. And that's where the skin men come from. I made the international symbol of mind blown and we laughed hysterically. You guys are dumb. Kimber rolled her eyes, but then she laughed when Kyle fell on the floor pretending he was exploding. I remember thinking in that moment that I was happy here in Driskin, Missouri, with these 2 people, happier than I'd ever been anywhere else. It was the last truly happy moment I'd ever had. Less than an hour later, Mr. Diamond's phone rang and he exchanged a few quiet words with a person on the other end, his eyes flickering to and from my desk. It was hard to be surprised then when he hung up and asked me to come to the front. When I got there, he told me my mom was waiting for me in the office and I was going home for the day. I traded a confused and worried look with Kimber and then packed up my backpack and went to the office. When I got there, my mom was crying. We drove home in a strained silence. I was too afraid to ask what was wrong. Mom parked the car a block from our house, which was blocked by several police cars. When an explanation didn't come, I broke the silence myself. it, is it Dad? I asked quietly, holding back tears. No, honey. Dad is fine, she whispered. Then what happened? Whitney never made it to school this morning. Her voice broke over my sister's name. Oh, no, Mom. I think she ditched, I said quietly. I saw her leave this morning and it was like really, really like 6. And she was like with her friends, Pete Whitaker and that kid Taylor. We know how bad that's Sam, but they made it to school and Whitney wasn't with them. They said she wanted to stop by the Circle K near Driskin High, so they left her there. And no one has seen her since. Well, my brain struggled to come up with an explanation. Maybe she's ditching. No, honey. My mom put the car back in drive and drove up to our house, parking behind the police cruiser. The police, as well as your father, they think Whitney is with Jay. But she has a new boyfriend here. We found all her books on the floor of her room this morning and half her clothes gone along with some cash of your dad's. But right now we think she hitched a ride to St. Louis and that she's with Jay. The sheriff's office is trying to connect the boy's parents now. Whitney? Runaway? Anyone who knew my sister knew she was prone to dramatics and empty threats. Plus she was dating Chris Riddiger's older brother Pete. I was sure of it. We walked up the stairs and into the office filled with stale coffee and quiet murmurs. I tried to remember if Whitney herself had ever actually confirmed she was dating Pete, but I drew a blank. When we walked into the kitchen, I saw my father sitting at the table, staring at phone records, head in hand. He looked up when I came into the room and gave me a weak smile. Hey, buddy. Dad, I have to tell you something. I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder and turned to look up at solemn Sheriff clearly. Everything and anything you know, my no son, no matter how trivial you think it is. I nodded and sat down at the table with my dad as my mom handed the big man a cup of coffee. Here you go, Sheriff, she said weakly. Please, Miss Walker, call me Killian. My mother nodded and retreated back into the darkened corner to quietly with Sheriff Clearly's wife, Grace. What do you know, Sam? My dad asked as he rested his chin on my hands with a mock symbol of prayer as though I may deliver him from his suffering. Well, I just heard Whitney had a boyfriend, that guy Pete Whitaker, that she's been hanging out with, and I saw them and Taylor Drangen leave this morning before me. What time did they leave? Asked the sheriff. I don't know. Like maybe before 6? He nodded. That matches the statement of Taylor Drangen and the Whitaker boy. My father's head sunk lower into his hands, and I knew I'd let him down. But, I rushed, I don't think she went back to St. Louis because she was dating Pete, and I don't think she wanted to be with her boyfriend back home anymore. I understand that, son, but teenage girl's mind is a complicated thing. My officers are trying to get a hold of the boyfriend's family back in St. Louis, Cooley nodded to my father. Now why don't you head up to your room and let us work, Samuel? I looked up at him in surprise. What? No, I want to stay down here. I can help. No, son. There's nothing more you can do here. You've been a good brother. Now let us handle this. But I can help. You already have. Dad! I looked over at my dad with begging eyes. Go to your room, Sam, he said quietly after a moment. I bulked. Dad! Now! I was so angry I did the only thing I could of to make my rage known. I stomped upstairs, slammed the door, and then sat on my bed in disbelief. The tears came then, and I laid there feeling hopeless, worthless, and scared for my sister. I thought about all the places Whitney could be. Was she scared? Was she alone? Was she, she dead? Then the sun began to set. I finally got out of bed and went to check my email. I was expecting a lot of messages from Kimber and Kyle, but there was only one. Did she go to the treehouse? I sat staring at the computer screen for almost a minute. Kimber's words fell from last fall echoed in my mind. If you ever went to the treehouse without the proper ceremony, you'll disappear and then you'll die. I didn't buy that Whitney had gone to Circle K that morning, and I especially didn't believe that she ditched out of town. Nothing they were saying downstairs made any sense if they knew my sister, but maybe this did. Maybe she and her boyfriend went to the treehouse to make out or something, and maybe he'd left her there. Maybe she'd gotten lost, or maybe the skin man had found her. That was the worst thought of all. I didn't need to sneak out because the police were too busy with my parents to care about me anyways. I snuck my bike out of the garage and rode 3 miles to the West Rim Prescott Ore Trail. When I got there, I saw 2 bikes already locked in the signpost and my 2 best friends sitting in the snow next to them. I knew you'd come, Kyle said when I pulled my bike up and Kimber ran up to hug me. I'm so sorry, Sam. There was really nothing for me to say, and they didn't push. Kimber took my arm and we started up the trail. The silence between us stretched but uncomfortable. We trudged through the snow, and all the while I searched for the telltale footprints of others, but the snow was coming too fast. The hike up the mountain was harder and wetter than we'd come in the fall, and when Apricot Fort finally came into view over the ridge, it was our welcome sight. The sun was getting low, and we hadn't brought flashlights. I fell as I ran up the tree, calling my sister's name to the quiet wild. Kyle was right behind me, leapt impressively over the rope ladder, climbing quietly up the planks. I kept calling Whitney's name, waiting for Kyle to yell that he'd found her or that there was at least some sign of her. And then when I heard Kimber quietly say my name from where she stood at the triple tree, I ran over and tried to follow her. Eyes to confirm why I already knew what was there. And then I found it, freshly carved near the top. Whitney W. My breath froze in my chest and my vision blurred with unwelcome tears as the sun took its last desperate breath before plunging into the deep of the horizon. A deafening metallic whirl sang over from the wilderness and spilled down the mountainside. And that is the end of Borrasca Part 1.
Okay.
Mind you, there's like 5 other fucking parts.
Okay. Okay. But
Yeah, so that's just part 1.
all right. I'm interested.
I kind of knew you would be, to be honest.
Part 1, how many parts are there?
I think there's 5 or 6 in total. I think
5 and okay. So either 5 or 6. Okay.
so. You guys are gonna be hearing one hell of a story from me.
For real.
I can't find a short one.
Okay.
So, well, hopefully y'all liked our stories this week.
Yeah.
So, hopefully you're in it for Borrasca Part 2 next week.
All right.
So, we'll see y'all then.
Bye.